Welcome to the Bytes of Azure Podcast.
Fast, fresh, digestible cloud insights.
The latest updates, trends and technology.
Real talk with real Azure experts.
Let's unlock the cloud together.
Welcome to the Bytes of Azure Podcast. I'm Andrew Levine. Thanks for coming.
I'm Tony Cox. I am a partner solutions engineer at Nerdio.
Today we will be discussing AVD and Nerdio. Tell me about Nerdio.
Well, Nerdio is a Microsoft, 100% Microsoft ISV, and we provide a set of tooling that makes AVD, Intune, and now Windows 365 just far simpler to manage.
Okay. And if you had to explain it in simple English, what would you call AVD?
Well, AVD is Microsoft's virtual desktop platform in the cloud. So Microsoft has a product called Azure, which provides a number of cloud-based services. Pretty much everything Microsoft does in the cloud is foundationally built on Azure. And AVD, or Azure Virtual Desktop, is Microsoft's virtual desktop environment, just kind of like then surrounded by all the other Microsoft technologies like Entra and Microsoft 365, for example. Used to be called Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, more recently, has been called Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay.
And if anyone obviously AVD and virtualization has been in the market a long time. I remember when I started as an engineer, it was something that people were pushing and moving towards. Again, back then it was the days when cloud was new and it was just getting adopted. What is the current market driving this adoption now for AVD?
It's a really good question, because we're now beginning to see a world where I guess the cloud's much more mature. People understand what that means. So when people say, "Oh, I'm in the cloud," or going to the cloud, or whatever it is, people kind of understand what that means as a term and a concept now. So we're at the stage where it's very mature. We see there's Microsoft as a large number of customers using Azure as a platform, including AVD, and where I think we're at this sort of inflection point now where we've got a very mature platform that you could move to, and customers are sat on, from a virtualization point of view, a number of what you might term heritage platforms. And for economic and commercial reasons, and also as well because maybe that technology hasn't been updated for a very, very long time, there's a compelling event for them to go to the cloud and move to a fully cloud environment like AVD, for example. And that's compounded, of course, by the cost of physical hardware now. Yeah. The organization you work for, Andrew, will see they're kind of significant increases in hardware costs, which means at this point where you compare a physical desktop with a virtual desktop, all of a sudden the virtual desktop's looking really compelling.
Yeah.
Because you've got an expensive piece of hardware now, and you could argue in the past it was a relatively cheap piece of hardware, and the add-on cost of managing it really didn't add a huge amount to that cost.
Yeah.
I think we're in a position now whereby, because if you look at the cloud, it can be evergreen, constantly updated, constantly, ensured that around governance and security and all of that stuff, all of a sudden this very expensive piece of hardware where you have to put a bunch of tooling on it to do the same sort of thing, it just doesn't add up, or in some scenarios doesn't add up anymore. So there becomes a point where you're kind of thinking, I can give my general workforce a virtual desktop now and manage it and water it and feed it for a lot less than if I was to give them a physical device.
Yeah. Well, it is a very complex, and again, even when I did it before, it was always something that felt larger and easy to say it, but the complexities of sort of getting into it and the nuances. And again, Azure, some people are sort of worried around the complexities just adopting Azure. Some people are still busy with on-prem and a little bit of a hybrid, but to move my virtual environment, my end users into the cloud is something they probably see as a bit daunting. Again, obviously from a technology point of view, always anything with the cloud, everyone's a little bit worried about the costs of it.
Yes.
What can Nerdio do to make that easier? Was there something, because again, AVD and people are using it, and there's obviously other tools and platforms around in terms of Citrix and whatever VMware is doing in terms of what that is. But what benefits would Nerdio give customers if they're looking to get into AVD?
I think when you approach AVD as a kind of platform and a set of tooling, and then when you basically then look at Nerdio as part of that environment, the thing that Nerdio does, if you kind of boil it all down, is just make it easier. Just make it easier to deploy. So they make that day one stuff easier, but then make that day two stuff, the kind of automation and the cost management and the optimization, just much, much easier to do. And if you can make things simpler, then resources, time and effort, that all shrinks. That saves a lot of money. And then when you get to the position where you're running it and you want it constantly optimized, because of course optimization of an environment isn't a one-off thing, because of the environment changes, the organization changes shape and all that sort of thing. You can use Nerdio to kind of constantly monitor and update and manage and optimize that environment. So for example, you might have a bunch of users where a particular compute model is the way they need to do their thing today, but that doesn't mean it's the same compute model that will be optimized or best for them at some in 12 months time or 6 months time. And what Nerdio can do is say, there's a bunch of users doing things in a particular way. Actually, maybe this other compute might be a better way of giving them the things that they need, and here's the cost savings you can make out of that. So there's that simplicity, just making things quicker, and fundamentally as a consequence of those things is reducing costs.
Okay. And that's all through the Nerdio platform. It's not sort of something they sort of have to spin up somewhere else, or it's an isolated something there and something else elsewhere. No, so
that's a really good point, actually. So what we're trying to do here is basically coalesce everything under one, the kind of cliche one pane of glass, if you like. Okay. So taking all of the different screens and blades and stuff that you'd have to go through to do it in Azure, that all comes under the kind of Nerdio, into the Nerdio portal. But also as well now, because the desktop computer or the end user compute space is a lot bigger, we now include Intune. Okay. And because we include Intune, that means we include the Windows 365 Cloud PC. Okay. And also then includes the physical endpoint as well, because people are using Intune to manage cloud PCs and physical endpoints as well. So bring that all under one roof, if you like. And then within the Nerdio tooling itself, if you've ever done anything with AVD natively, you look at Nerdio and go, if I wanted to make my life easier, this is the way I would do it. And then provide a bunch of tooling just to kind of like strip away some of that complexity that you get managing an AVD environment and just bringing it all together in one place. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense, because a lot of the people I sort of speak to on a daily basis, that Azure portal, truth doesn't do anyone any favors. It is lots of windows and lots of parts and lots of pieces that it is difficult to manage. That's just sort of traditional Azure from a virtual machine point of view. And adding that level of sort of AVD and then an end user world, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of benefit in it in terms of adopting AVD. Again, obviously there's sort of the Azure virtual world, but then you did mention around the sort of Intune elements, and so it is a complete EUC tool across the board. It doesn't just isolate itself.
So we get to this kind of world now where we talk about cloud endpoints. And that cloud endpoint infers both the fact that the compute and the desktop image, for example, all sits in the cloud, or it could be, in the case of Intune, for example, Intune's a cloud-based tool, but it manages physical endpoints. So that whole kind of like cloud management and cloud endpoint piece is all kind of wrapped up in one place.
Okay. And then Entra ID, if you've adopted that M365 world, ties across the thing, your Azure Active Directory in the same space, it all flows through, so you can sort of govern and protect it.
Which is back to your point, the kind of point is this wraparound. So it's not just thinking about AVD in isolation, it's also what are all the other services you need to provide a user desktop. And it's going to be, what's their identity? So it's going to be AD or Entra. And what other tooling are you going to include, which could be all the M365 tooling. But also as well, where's the data sit? The data is probably going to sit in Azure, in OneDrive, for example, or all of those sorts of things. And then, of course, I guess that segues into a little bit of the things like, some of the AI agent stuff that plays with that too.
That comes across. Yeah. And then one of the sort of questions I remember getting asked by one of our customers around the sort of, if they have their environment or their end user environment on-prem, it is something they can see, it's something they can back up, and they can they're not dependent on the outage of a cloud provider, which we've seen in the market becoming more and more common. Again, AVD, there's elements around resilience and sort of recovery areas.
Yeah.
What does AVD make that any easier?
Well, AVD will then sit, of course, in an Azure infrastructure.
Okay.
So all of the work that Microsoft does around creating a management plane, which builds in resiliency.
Yeah.
So you've got availability zones in a region, for example, and then you've got regional pairs, for example, for failover and DR. And Nerdio just takes advantage of that.
Okay.
And also as well allows you to spread things around a bit, to coin a phrase. So you can take it. So if you have, for example, if we're going to get technical for a minute, if you've got a host pool, you can spread that host pool across various regions. For example, we're going to make that a lot easier and significantly scaled up through what we call global pools, which is coming very shortly.
Okay.
And so all of those elements that sit inside the Azure infrastructure, we can take advantage of those things, including, as you mentioned, DR and HA.
Okay. And with anything with these sort of AVD is the scaling aspect.
Yes.
Obviously, some people before you would have had to buy the compute on-prem, or even someone who is spinning something in the cloud, it just feels like it is something that can grow arms and legs quite quickly. What does Nerdio do? Obviously, there's a cost factor, but then there's also the sort of sprawling aspect.
Yes.
Where anything with sort of golden images and cleaning that sort of world up, where, again, I've taken advantage of AVD, but then I'm creating this sort of mess that I can't contain.
Well, that's one of the great things when we begin to talk about using Nerdio as part of that AVD platform, is about bringing all that potential chaos under control. Okay. Bringing it under control before it becomes chaos.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the great existential question you always have, and I use that term, when you talk about what you're going to do from a VDI point of view, is like, what do you do with your images?
Yeah.
How many images do you have? Do you create a base image and clone it and then build your images all on top of that? Or do you have multiple images in place? The question then, of course, comes is, how do you update it? How do you keep it current?
Yeah.
And we do a whole bunch of automation to make that so much simpler. So you set it all up.
Into the
and
platform.
It's built in. So you can kind of say, here's an image, it's got some stuff in it.
Okay.
Every time Microsoft releases a patch for Windows, patch the rest of it about 2 days later. Or whatever time you want. So you can say 2 days after patch Tuesday, update the image and do it all automatically for me. So the next time you use that image, it's always current.
And that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to require Intune. That could be done separately through Nerdio, or does it require...
That could all be done through Nerdio. Yeah. So what Nerdio will do is that it will, from an image point of view, from what they call unified application management, we have a kind of catalog with a bunch of apps in it.
Yeah. And
you can automate all of that to say, is there a new version of this application? If there is, update it 2 days after patch Tuesday, so the image is always current.
Oh, wow.
And what that then means is that when you then kind of move from images to host pools, it always means that the host pools are always current and up to date.
Well, that's impressive. And then from a cost side of things?
Good question. Really good question. I think we always get this question because, of course, with Azure, it's a consumption model.
Yeah, that can run away very quickly.
So it's not a monolithic license, or it's not a kind of like, you pay every month, that kind of stuff, per user per month stuff. It tends to be, it is a consumption-based model. And to your point, it can run away with you, particularly if people don't switch things off.
No, exactly.
When you don't need them anymore. And you've probably seen this, and we've seen this numerous times, where customer will say to us, why is my Azure bill so big? And so the basic question is, are you turning things off when you don't need them? And sometimes the answer is, no, I haven't switched that stuff off. So we have something called auto scaling in Nerdio.
Okay. And that's not built into Azure natively.
That's not a native. No. So lots of the fundamentals about Nerdio is looking at the existing tooling and saying, what doesn't it do?
Yeah.
And can we plug those gaps, or can we fill those gaps with things like auto scaling, for example? Or what does it currently do that we can make it better at?
Okay. And is Microsoft just ignoring this
Well, no, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do, because it is co-developed with Microsoft.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the Microsoft engineers and the Nerdio engineers sit down, because these Microsoft engineers have a load of stuff to do. Yeah. So we're kind of saying, are you going to do this bit? And they're going to go, well, not yet. No, let us do that bit for you.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great, because I think that some people might be worried around, you're committing to another tool and then Microsoft sort of just comes along and builds it natively into the platform. It's like, well, why did I do that?
Yeah, that's obviously always a danger.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that sometimes, some of the things that we do, a version of that sort of turns up today, but that's quite rare actually, particularly with things like auto scaling, which we kind of wind back to. So this is ability to go, I've got a bunch of machines running.
Yeah.
My users aren't using them, I'll switch them off. Or my users tend to come in at a particular time in the morning, just warm those hosts up before the users come in. So when they log in, they're not waiting an extended period of time.
Storm,
your login storms.
Login storm.
Yeah, and you can also as well you can do what they call burst capacity.
Okay.
So you could say, I think at any one time the profile is going to look like this. I'm going to have these many users logging in. But if all of a sudden there's loads more users, you can ask Nerdio can kind of go, what we'll do is we'll just burst a load more extra hosts or extra compute, and extra hosts. So the users aren't going, I can't log in.
Yeah.
So that kind of login.
Which is always the thing.
Which is always a problem. And then of course, being able to auto shrink and auto grow the environment depending on what the users are doing.
Definitely. That's going to be a massive cost saver.
Massive cost saving also as well. Yeah, I think we discussed it earlier on, didn't we? This idea of making sure you're on the right storage type. So when you're running, you want to be really fast.
Yeah.
So you can use premium storage. But when it's sat at rest, why pay for expensive premium storage when you just run it on the kind of much lower cost storage? So you can do that with Nerdio. So you got it to automatically move around when it's not being used.
Yeah. That was one of the main features I've always heard. That's sort of one of the most impressive, because it is something where your compute, you can be scaling up and down. Again, the traditional Azure, you would be doing a manually in setting periods, but if Nerdio is allowing you to do that dynamically with more intelligent, that's amazing. But your compute, your storage is going to stay there.
Yes.
And if you run in premium disks, which cost the premium, and they're just sitting because everyone's closed off, or someone hasn't turned them off over the weekend, or someone forgot to, a PowerShell script hasn't run properly. Yeah. Nerdio can obviously resolves that.
Yeah. So we have this ability to what we call auto healing.
Okay.
So what that means is that if for some reason, like for example, the AVD agent falls over, or the heart
agent, you mean like on the endpoint?
Yeah, on the endpoint.
Okay.
So what's happened is that AVD via Nerdio can't communicate with the endpoint anymore.
Okay.
We can do something called auto healing. So, and again, you could set up a whole bunch of rules about what happens. So it could simply be, if this doesn't happen in this period of time, reboot everything, restart everything. So it'll shut everything down, restart it automatically. And you could say, and then wait 10 minutes. And if that's still the problem, do it again. And if it doesn't work, rebuild everything.
Perfect. And that's the user itself would obviously...
The user doesn't have to, will never know that that's gone on.
Yeah.
Because it's all done through the administration part of Nerdio, and it's completely automatic.
Yeah, instead of the world of, I remember IT phoning someone off, you need to log off, we need to reboot.
Yeah, you won't be someone going, have you turned it off and turned it back on again? Because Nerdio will actually do that for you automatically.
Amazing. And then obviously everyone in an ideal world, everything's in the cloud, but everyone I've spoken to on a daily basis, it's a very rare thing. There's the odd startup who has that luxury.
We live in a hybrid world.
Hybrid is the case. Yeah. And again, on-prem, even the cost of things, some people are driving back towards on-prem. Again, there's that discussion of OpEx versus CapEx, which is the thing, where's my sovereignty, what's happening in America, all sorts of sort of nuances are coming into play. What do the world look like in terms of, again, AVD in a hybrid world? Not really that possible. With Nerdio?
Actually, quite the contrary.
Okay.
Because Microsoft I think it's in public preview at the moment.
Okay.
But later on, probably sometime in the summer, you're going to see AVD hybrid.
Yeah.
And Microsoft has learned a lot from something called Azure Local.
Yes.
And you could place AVD on Azure Local, and you could use Nerdio to manage that AVD instance on Azure Local. So lots of learnings that have been gone on there has enabled Microsoft to kind of think about what happens if we wanted to run AVD not in the cloud, but on someone else's hardware, using someone else's hypervisor.
Yeah.
And that's what AVD hybrid is. So it's this ability to get all the advantages of AVD from a management point of view, and consequently use Nerdio for that as well, and place that onto your existing hardware infrastructure. So to your point, maybe an organization is looking at their hardware infrastructure and they're going, we've still got some time.
We've got a couple of years.
We got some time with this stuff still. We don't want to write it off yet. And you make a really interesting point, what about data sovereignty? Maybe what we can do is we could take AVD and place it on that right here, and that is going to be perfectly possible very, very shortly. It's going to start with Nutanix. So you might see some announcements within Microsoft, Nerdio, and Nutanix about that being the initial platform we're going to be able to do that with. And Microsoft, a launch partner with Microsoft around AVD hybrid. But what's also really interesting about that environment is that if you want to, you'll be able to burst into the cloud. So back to your point, if you don't have enough capacity on premise, because of course the difference is that a cloud is pretty much infinitely scalable. But if you're using on-prem hardware, there's a finite amount of tin that you're running. And if you run out of capacity, you'll be able to you could just burst into the cloud. Use the cloud for that extra capacity. And when the storm, of whatever type it is, recedes, you'll be able to basically move everything back on prem again.
Which again, I've seen lots of customers, and that's how I originally helped most businesses, was that sort of cloud resilience. As opposed to let's move completely to the cloud. It was sort of
So you're using the cloud almost as a sort of like, guarantor, if you like. So something happens on prem, we'll just go to the cloud for that little bit. We'll use it whilst it makes sense, and then we'll go back to on premise when everything calms down.
Which is great from a Nerdio, just the idea of you bursting into the cloud. AVD wouldn't have been an option. It wouldn't have
not historically, no. But now, and also as what we'll be able to do later on is basically run it in a sort of full hybrid mode. So some stuff is on prem, some stuff is in the cloud.
Okay, so some host pools on,
and then stretch them across these different environments as well. So again, giving you the kind of like a full advantage of being a hybrid.
Oh wow. And then how would that link in if you had, again, there's obviously the end user compute world, which is just your virtualized desktop experience. How does that work or sort of complement if someone just wanted to push sort of a remote app into that hybrid board? Is there a scenario that you would sort of foresee?
I don't see anything particularly complex about that. So for now, I mean, we live in a world from a Microsoft perspective where everything goes, from a virtualization point of view, goes through the Windows app. And the Windows app will just point either in one direction or in the other direction. Or the AVD environment at the back end will just manage all of that. So the user will never know.
No.
And the user, to be fair, the user does not need to know.
They shouldn't.
They don't need to know whether their virtual desktop is running from some hardware in a particular data center in a particular location, or is somewhere in an Azure region. They don't need to know that sort of thing. So the users, so from a user point of view, the whole thing will be completely obfuscated through the app.
And then all this sounds amazing in terms of what it is. And then this is a situation in the market that we can see where there's obviously two significant scenarios and two sort of vendors at the moment, or technology providers, where you've got Citrix, which has caught a lot of people in terms of that was something a lot of customers were dependent on. And now they only need a portion of what they actually needed on their license stack, and now they got to pay for everything. And then you've got VMware with also the Broadcom purchase, and now it's a subscription model instead of perpetual licensing. How does Nerdio look like? Where, again, I imagine some people are quite wary of committing to these sort of platforms that look like commercially they sort of regret they'd ever done it, and now be stuck in this thing.
So at a kind of very basic level, it's all about monthly active users. So when you do the maths, because of the savings we talked about through auto-scaling and optimization and all that kind of stuff, Nerdio ends up paying for itself and then some. So we see lots of scenarios where customers using Nerdio, and the cost of Nerdio is not even a discussion. Because the amount of saving they'll make from they'll run a pilot, run a proof of value, and they'll see, hang on, we save so much through switching things off, auto-scaling, the amount of time it takes to do things. That Nerdio just pays for itself. And actually in the Nerdio tooling, there's also an online version as well. We have a modeling tool So you can say, here's my scenario, here's my compute, here's the number of users. It might be a blend of maybe multi-session or personal desktops or Windows 365. You can build a model, and then what it will tell you is, here's what we think the overall cost is going to be, and this is what we think the Nerdio savings are going to make.
Oh, wow.
And some of those numbers can be quite big.
Definitely.
And so whilst you're in an unoptimized environment, the numbers could be quite large.
Yeah.
If you do a little bit of tweaking to the native platform and you're saving 20, 30, 40%, the Nerdio cost doesn't even become part of the debate.
And the worst case, I mean, Frank, is if that it is still in your Azure. It is still an AVD environment.
Yes.
It is still there. It's not like you have like Citrix, somewhere where it is Citrix.
No, you make a really interesting point, because what we're doing is you install Nerdio into the customer's Azure tenant.
Yeah.
So empty resource group, Azure Marketplace, install it into that resource group, point it at everything, point it at your AVD environment, point it at your Intune environment, and then Nerdio will then basically begin to get populated with telemetry and data and this kind of stuff. And at that point, you can use Nerdio to basically manipulate and control those environments.
Any sort of, if anyone is considering AVD or Nerdio, what would be the one takeaway you would sort of...
If you're looking to bring that all under control, if you had a look at the native platform and you think, how do I manage, how do I kind of make sense of it and manage it? How do I bring those costs under control? Then have a look at Nerdio. I mean, Nerdio has often been described as the AVD easy button. Okay. And I think that's probably not a bad descriptor. And we see organizations who are looking at deploying or managing it, AVD, and they won't go near it without using Nerdio to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. From our side, we help customers on a daily basis, obviously work alongside Nerdio, and always excited to sort of introduce customers to see how we could help you make an adoption of AVD or improve your AVD environment at Bytes. So give your account manager a call if you're interested, and we can set something up and help you out.
Yeah, or find us both on LinkedIn and start a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure.